Many may not know that October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. In respect of those who has been affected by domestic violence, this is my story. No one ever expects to become a victim. Needless to say, I never thought that I would experience domestic violence in my life, but I did. Some time ago, I was in a relationship with someone that whom I thought I loved, and I thought he loved me as well. And throughout the relationship, in the beginning, it was fine. Well, I thought it would be fine. And I had this fairy dream that we would get married, have kids, and just love, be happy ever after. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. I have learned that when you start seeing signs of someone that has anger or their temperament is always being angry, or they display signs of they can hurt you, 9 out of 10, that's the time right there to just walk away from it. And I didn't. And I have also learned that your mind is wiser than your heart. Your heart is full of emotions, full of love, and full of hope, just thinking that one day will be better and not really understanding that days sometimes just don't come. And I allowed my heart to override what my mind was telling me to do. So in the beginning, everything was fine to what I thought it would be fine. And then one day we was in his home, in his bedroom, and this is the first time he displayed of a temperament of someone that can abuse me. We end up getting an argument about something, and I went to go turn away to walk away from him, and he began to pull me back. And as he pulled me back aggressively, he pulled me down on the bed, and he raised his hand like he was going to hit me, but he stopped. But he did tell me, the first thing he said was, "Don't make me hurt you." And you would think right then and there that I would have just got up and walked away and went home and don't come back. But again, I allowed my emotions to be led in the forefront. And every time he said he was sorry, every time he said he loved me, I will always give him another opportunity and another chance. The second time was, instead of the words and being aggressive, this one he literally hit me. It starts off with maybe pushing, it starts off with smacking you. And then next thing I know, I've been feeling his fist up against me. And it don't take much to make him mad at the time. But wherever it was, no one deserves to be hit. No one deserves to be talked to in a derogatory way. No one deserves to have their character and their confidence to be torn down. But as time went on, because every time he said he was sorry, every time he said he loved me, I stayed and kept giving him chance after chance after chance, hoping that one day he would see how much I love him, and he would stop hitting me, or he would stop tearing me down. And again, it wasn't like this all the time. But when it was like that, it was so horrible and so degrading that I would either go home crying, or I would be in the bed crying and just hoping for a better day. So as time went on, it got worse. It had gotten worse, and it got worse. It never got better. And then when I would say other substance was involved, whether it was alcohol or anything else that may be his taste at that time, to mix on top of the anger that he already had, it would just even be more of a devastating event that's going to happen. So to lead up to me being hurt already, to me crying at night, to me never wearing makeup, but then I learned how to put makeup on. I learned how to cover up the bruises. I learned how to cover up the black eyes. I learned how to cover up the bruises on my legs and the scratches and things like that. But no one ever told me there's not enough makeup that you can cover for a broken heart. There's never enough makeup you can cover your confidence being torn down and low self-esteem. There's never enough makeup for that. I was scared. I never told anyone. Needless to say, I never even told my best friend. She may have knew some things that had happened, but not in total in detail of what I really was experiencing every single day. And again, because I loved him. I thought I loved him anyway, but not realizing I needed to love and value myself first. And I learned that as a lesson long time ago, that I had to value myself first. So to bring it up to speed, after all the hits and after all the abuse, after all the words being torn down, one particular night where I found out where I should have known that my life now was getting in danger, because again, it gets from one stage to the next stage. It may start off with words, then it may start off with hitting or smacking or a little shoving and things like that. Then it goes to the next stage of the abuse. One particular night, I remember coming in to his house, and it was, I would say maybe 12, maybe 1 o'clock in the morning. And as I got in the bed, he wasn't there. When he came home, again, there was some substance involved. And because he found out that I had went out that night, he got in the bed, he wanted to start an argument. I just turned over and went to sleep, only to be awakened with a knife to my throat. And as a knife was to my throat, he began to degrade me by spreading my legs apart from each other and decide he wanted to examine me to see if I had been with someone else. At this time, again, tears rolling down my face. Someone may say, why didn't you fight? Why didn't you do anything? Why didn't you punch him or hit him? And not understanding that when your body is feeling a shock of something, it goes into survival mode. And I'll explain that a little bit more in detail closer to the end of this video. So as he was doing that, I just laid there. I was scared. I didn't know if he was going to actually cut me. I didn't know if he was going to kill me. I didn't know he was going to slit my throat. I didn't know what he was going to do. Only to pleasing to him that he felt as though that I wasn't cheating on him or I wasn't doing anything. He proceeded to have intercourse with me. Then that was another degrade thing, because now you victimized me and then turn around. Now you want to have intercourse with me. So that's another tactic of a mental state on the emotions of the mind. So after that was over and done with, I went home the next day. And again, someone still probably out there say, why did you go back? Why didn't you just stay away from him? Why did you mustn't like him beating on you. And let me say this, no person that has ever been abused like being abused. No one likes to be hit. No one likes to be talked to in a certain way. No one likes to be degraded. No one wants their confidence to be torn down. But when your emotions and your heart is involved with someone, again, you hope more for the better, because all that person has to say is, I came there without you. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. I love you. This is my way of showing that I love you. I don't mean to hurt you. You're my best friend. All the words of adorations that one that might want to feel or hear when they're in a relationship, this is all that you hear in the back of your head. Your mind is telling you to get up and leave. Don't go back. But your heart is so engulfed with a person. It's saying, stay, give them another chance. Don't walk away from them. And this was going on with me the whole time. I didn't want to walk away from him at the time. So that was one instance. Another instance was when, again, we got to arguing about something, and whatever it was that set him off or went on an event of anger, he decided to open up the window one day. And because they lived on a high-story floor, he decided to open up the window one day. And I didn't realize what he was doing, because, again, it was in the summertime. I'm thinking he just wanted to get some air in the room. Only to find out he picked me up and he tried to throw me out the window. And he was dangling me out on the ledge of the window. I'm screaming, I'm hollering. He told me he would kill me if I ever decided to leave him, that the only way I could leave him is through the way of death. And then again, there go another fear tactic that he put in your mind, that no matter how much I want to walk away from him, The very thing I kept feeling or hearing in my mind was, he's going to kill me if I walk away from him. So the last very tactic, and I know you're probably saying the last, yes, there have been many instances of it, but just to give you the depth of what's going on, what happened at that time, I'm just breaking it up in a part of it. The very last episode that we had is I ended up finding out that I was pregnant. And this is probably one of the joyous times that we had because we both wanted a baby together. And I found out I was pregnant now. And as months started progressing, I started developing complications. I was 5 months pregnant, and throughout the sonogram, I found out that it was a boy. So we definitely both was excited because we both wanted a boy. And I was pregnant. Only to, I say 2-3 weeks later into find out my 5th month pregnancy, that I started having complications, and I found out that my son had died. In the midst of him, in the birth of, I had to deliver a stillborn son. He was nowhere to be found. My family couldn't get in contact with him. So I had to go through that process by myself. After I delivered my son, I would say 12, 13 hours later, because they had to induce labor, he came up to the hospital. And then when he arrived to the hospital, I was holding our son. I was still holding our son. You can imagine the emotions of both of us crying because here we had our son and he's no longer in existence. We shared that moment together. In that moment, he also proposed to me, and I accepted his proposal because, again, my emotions is already everywhere, and I'm finally thinking, wow, he's finally getting himself together. We finally go do this, and we finally gonna be happy together. He promised to never put his hands on me anymore, and the whole time I was pregnant, he never put his hands on me. He didn't talk to me any type of way. But so I'm just thinking, it's finally things looking up for the both of us. After I got out the hospital, I would say 4 days later, I was home resting, and he called me on the phone and asked me to come down to his house. So against better judgment, because again, I'm home supposed to be resting, I went down to his house. That's probably one of the worst and probably the best thing that ever happened to me that led me onto this journey. As I went down to his house, again, I recognized when I first walked in the door that he had been on some type of substance. And when I entered into the bedroom, we began to argue about something. And as I turned my back towards him and to shut his door so we can talk more in private, as I shut his door, I heard this loud ringing sound in my ear, as if like it was getting louder, and it started hurting real bad. I began to grab for my head and my ear, only to realize that he had taken a house phone, and he took the receiver of that phone and he bust me upside my head with it. As he did that, as I turned around, I immediately dropped to the floor. And as I dropped to the floor, he began to take his foot, which he at the time had on some Timberland boots, and he began to kick me in my stomach and kick me in my uterus, my pelvic area. And his words was, it was you that caused our son's death. And he just kept hitting me, and kept kicking me. Then he lifted me up. And as he lifted me up, he pushed me up against the wall so violently that he took my head and slammed it inside the wall, that I soon learned to find out later that it was a hole inside of the wall with my head print on it, because that's how hard he hit my head against the wall. As that happened, again, I dropped to the floor. And by this time, it seemed like everything in my head was rushing, whether the blood was rushing to my head and whatever. I couldn't move. It felt like I was paralyzed at that moment. But I can hear him and I can feel every blow. He began to kick me even more. And I felt like this coldness around me. And I felt something wet, not only to realize it was my own blood that I was in. Then he lifted me back up and he began to hit me like a punching bag. He giving me body shots. And I fell to the floor again. Every time I fall, he would pick me back up and hit me violently and kicking me violently and things like that. And I remember the one hit I remember so painful, in which all of it was painful, but I remember where he took his fist and he punched me in my face on one cheek, and then he turned around and punched me on the other side of my cheek, only to find out that's when I found out he had broken my jaw. And this went on, seemed like forever, but it was just moments, but it seemed like it went on forever. And I laid there and he just kept kicking me until eventually a family member was able to get into the door and hold him down so I can get out the door. Because unbeknown to me at the time, they had just sent another family member out to go get help for me. As this family member was holding him down, he was screaming, "Get off of me, I'm a killer. She killed my son, and I'm a killer, I'm a killer, I'm a killer." And as I was literally crawling out his bedroom door, feeling for the layout in the house so I can try to get out the house, I can feel everything in my body, but like it was broken, it was cracking. I couldn't even feel my tears because everything else was blood now at this point. Let me go back just for a moment too, as well, in the story before the family member was able to open up the door just in the nick of time after he violently beat me. He was getting ready to rape me. So at this point now I'm undressed from the waist down below. So they was able to get in the door just in time before he was able to do that. And as I'm crawling out the door, I finally get to the front door. And because the family member had just went out the door, they left the door not only unlocked, but it was cracked open. And as it was cracked open, I pried the door open by the strength of God at this point, because I had no more strength, but I had enough strength to crawl out this door. I felt the steps because I knew that they lived on a high floor, and I felt for the steps. I couldn't stand up. Only way for me to get down the steps was to tumble over these steps. So already in my brokenness, already in my body is already bruised and beat up, I had to tumble down these steps. At this point, I think I probably passed out or blacked out, whatever you may want to call it. I woke up to myself being in the hospital. And as I was in the hospital, I was there for, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, for at least 3 months. When I finally came through, only to have been told that I suffered a concussion, I suffered broken ribs, my jaw was broken, my shoulder was dislocated. They had to push it back into place. My eye was busted. My left eye was busted, but they thought that I would never be able to see out my eye again because the blood vessel in my eye. I had swelling on my brain, so they had to sedate me and put me under for at least, I was told, for 2 to 3 weeks for the swelling to swell down from being so swollen. I suffered emotionally. I couldn't even put into words what I felt. My uterus had erupted because he had kicked me so much and so violently that they didn't want to have to do surgery, but they had told my mom to make a decision at this point that they believe I was bleeding internally And because I lost so much blood, because you remember I had just lost my son. So I was already maybe 3, 4 days post out of the hospital. So I was already just still dealing with the complications of that they told my mom that they would have to do a hysterectomy on me to stop the bleeding. And my mom told them, let that be your last resort in doing so. But if all possible, in order to save her life, if you have to do that, do that. Thank God they was able to stop the bleeding without taking my uterus. But nobody can heal from a broken heart at that time. Although I felt the pain of everything else, the whole time when I gained consciousness and realized I was in the hospital and began to see what I looked like laying there, no one deserved that type of beating. No one deserved any type of beating, let alone to be laying in the hospital, broken, bruised, and the doctors coming in and every time they check you can feel the pain of just a simple touch. So I was there, I want to say for 3 months. And after getting out the hospital, although everything he had done to me, and although I decided not to go back because I literally had to crawl out that door in order for me to save my life, I began to not stop thinking about him. And I have learned that at one point, when you think about how can a person go back to someone that abuses them, or why can't they just leave and walk away from the person, or why go back to them when they do leave? Physically, it's easy to leave. Mentally and emotionally, it's hard. When a person is done with a person mentally and emotionally, then they won't go back to the abuser. But the reason why it's so easy for a person to go back to their abuser is because they haven't gotten done away with them mentally and emotionally. And I had to literally detox myself from that situation, from the individual, knowing that it almost cost me my life. And it took years for me to rebuild my life. It took years for me to get to a point of just accepting myself and forgiving myself and loving myself and valuing myself. And then to determine who I really am as a person, what I have to offer, and what a person that I expect a person to bring to my life. So now that this relationship has ended, I had to rebuild my life all over again. And it still took me years to even rid myself of the guilt of losing a son, of giving birth to a baby that I felt like it was my fault because his life was no longer here, to only realize that my son's life saved my own life. And in return, not even knowing then or what had happened, that I would be saving someone else's life. Because after I got out of the hospital, and literally 1 week later, a female that he started a relationship with came to sort me out and came to my home. And only to realize that I was told by her that he was beating her in such a manner in which he had once beat me. And she wanted to know, how did I deal with it? What did I do? And she didn't even know in total, in detail, what had happened to me. After giving her my story, after telling her what happened to me and telling her that I literally had to crawl out for my life, that she may either have to be in the same situation, she's going to crawl, or she's going to be carried out. It was her choice. Only to find out that after she left my house, she didn't even go back to his house. I found out later on then that she left him. And a couple of months later, I ended up finding out through mutual friends of ours that she was doing better, she had gotten her life to better, and she never looked back. So although my son's life saved my life and my testimony, or me crawling for my life, saved somebody else behind me as well. That's how life changes lives came about. That's why I'm so passionate about this nonprofit organization because my life has been changed. And I'm hoping that through this testimony, that someone is out there that may be experiencing domestic violence. Somebody might be in a situation where they don't know how to get out, or they're in a situation they want to leave, but they're scared to leave, or they don't have anyone to talk to, or they feel like somebody is judging them. I've been there. I know what it's like to have someone you feel like that's going to judge you, and you don't want to tell anyone because they're going to say, oh, you stupid, or you must like being beaten, and or everything on. The worst thing that we can tell someone is, I told you so. So I know the feeling. I know what it's like. I'm telling you now, you're not alone. There is a friend in me. I might not even have to know you personally, but if you could just pick up the phone, get in contact with me, get in contact where I can connect you with someone that can help you and let you know that you don't have to stay in this situation. There may be someone that's been battered before and you scared to tell your story. Trust me, I've been there as well. It took me years to work up the nerve and the confidence and the boldness to not only tell the story here on this type of segment, but to tell my story on platforms that have been asked to speak on in regards to domestic violence. You have a voice, and now you have a voice. Let your voice be heard. Tell someone, I was once a victim, now I'm a survivor. And now I'm decided to go back after I have been healed, to go back and get other victims. Then they may come on this side as well as being a survivor. I have partnered up with other organizations. One is called Mended Wings. Robin Aspen Harley is the founder and the president over there that deal with other women that has been domestically abused in such a way, in a manner where they need someone to help build their lives. I have another friend, her organization is called Tisha Cares. And in regards to that organization, she helped young women or older women that has younger children that's unwed to rebuild from their lives. But it's not limited to that. Any aspect of any woman that's out there that's hurting, you can also go to that organization as well. So if there is help out there. And one of the things as well that I know that you're probably worrying about, if you're in such a situation, that there's nowhere for you to go. Who's going to help me? You may have kids with this person. You know, you don't want to take the kids away from their father. I understand. Trust me, I do. But just think about, if you stay in a situation, the same way that he's abusing you, eventually he will abuse the kids. And this video is no by means is to bash men, to degrade a man, because I do know that in situation men is also experiencing domestic violence from a woman. I understand that. But because this happened to me and I'm a woman, I can only tell my story, share my story with other women that may be experiencing this or have experienced this, and they're sitting there being silent about it. I'm asking you to join me on this fight and share your story, for your voice needs to be heard. My name is Carolyn Royal. I am the founder and president of Life Changers, Changes Lives. Our goal is to change one life at a time. Help me while we can help others. God bless you, and thank you for watching this video.